This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour is brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Yes, indeed. They do a great job of taking care of all your insurance needs. And we all have multiple insurance needs. And they do everything they can to save you money. Customer service means everything to them at Purdy Insurance. And don't forget, we're 29 days away from the Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament at the Susquehanna Valley Country Club to benefit the greater Susquehanna Valley YMCA. So sign your team up today. Signed up on our team is Keith Pompey joining us. Talk about the Sixers NBA. How are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. You've been asked a billion times about Paul George going to the Sixers, so I will make it 1,000,000,001 about the fit, in your opinion, of Paul George with Maxey and Embiid. How do you feel he fits?
I mean, I feel like he's a pretty good fit. I mean, because when you look at it, like, you look at Paul George, you look at Maxey, you look at Embiid, all three of them are different positions, right? You look at Paul George, he's a guy who brings it on the defensive end. He's a standout wing. He can also handle the ball. And then you see Maxey, a point guard, a combo guard, and Joel Embiid a center. So I think it's a really good fit because these are three guys who should be able to coexist together because they all bring different things to the game. So I look at Paul as a quality defender, a quality wing defender who can help him out greatly.
Maxey got a terrific deal out of this because of how he's played. You've watched him all the time. Where has he made the improvements to allow us to see what we are seeing now?
Well, that's a great question. I think the biggest improvement is his ability to run an offense, right? Because when you looked at it before, you said, oh, there's no way in heck that this guy can be a quality point guard. Like maybe he can be like, a guy who can handle the ball at times. But you look at him and you say he can't run an offense. That was the big question mark. So that's been the major. I would like to say that's been the major improvement. We all knew that he could score points. We all knew that he can, hit threes. But I think running an offense has been the biggest improvement that made him become an all-star.
Something that makes the championship teams like Denver and the Celtics is that, yes, they have stars, but the, quote, people that they fit in around them, and in the Celtics case, it's Derek White, it's Drew Holiday, and then guys off the bench like Hauser and of course, Al Horford. The Sixers have not fit parts around their stars as well. So when you look at the draft, coming in from Duke and the big guy from UCLA, what kind of fit can they be for this team?
They can be pretty good fits. Now, the guy from UCLA, I don't really expect him to play a lot. Like, I'm looking at him right now. He's going to be the third-string center.
Right.
But his name is Bona, Adem Bona. But when you look at the guy from Duke, his name is Jared McCann. I look to him to have a vital role, to play a key role for them. Because in him, he's a guy who can have that come off the bench, stretch a defense. When Maxey's off the floor and other people, you can spread the floor and try to let them go to work. But the thing is, the biggest role is when you look at the Sixers when they had Jimmy Butler, they had J.J. Redick. J.J. Redick was like the sharpshooter. I see him coming in and being that, coming off of screens, hitting shots. So to me, that's his biggest role. Now, again, part of the problem is like him and Maxey, that's a really, really small backcourt. So he's not going to start. He's going to come off the bench. But for right now, for a championship team, his best asset is his ability to shoot. And also, he's a winner. Like, he gets after it. But Bona, the guy, the center that they got in the second round, I don't, like, if you got to play him a lot of minutes, I think the Sixers may be in trouble. Yeah, and that's not a knock against him. But when you have Joel Embiid and you have Andre Drummond as your first two centers, Bona's going to be a guy who, an insurance policy, so to speak.
He's going to have a good view of the game because it's going to be on the sideline. Yeah. I thought Andre Drummond was a good pickup. What was your thought on that?
Oh, he was a huge pickup. And it's funny because after they traded him, it was weird. Like, they traded him, and then all of a sudden they go to the playoffs, and Joel gets injured. And they're like, wow, here we go. Like, I mean, literally, Joel got injured that first playoff series, and then he missed the first two games, I believe, in that one, in the second round. So it's like they've been trying to get him back since. I mean, they were, and this past season, they thought they had a trade for him, and it fell through in the final second. But him, you look at him, he's going to be a huge benefit because the Sixers, when you look at the 76ers, they were a team who struggled mightily in rebounding. And you look at Andre Drummond, that's what he does. He's a great rebounder. Also, he's a starter level center. He's been a backup. He was a multi-time All-Star. But when he comes in there, it's kind of like you have a guy, you're not going to utilize him the same way you utilize Joel. But at the same time, you have a guy that, it can still score points, can do things, and you don't have to worry about on the defensive end of getting abused and getting out rebounds and things like that. So he's a great pickup. As much as we talk about Paul George, don't get me wrong.
Right.
Paul George is huge. Mm-hmm. But when you look at Drummond and you look at the weaknesses that they've had when Embiid didn't play, being able to get that guy was extremely vital for the Sixers' success.
All right, I want to ask you now about the single most talked about second-round pick in the history of the NBA. And I know you're in Salt Lake. All right, so you're not down in Vegas to see any of this live. But, look, Dalton Knecht was the Lakers' first-round pick. And I thought that was a good first-round pick, by the way. I thought that was a good first-round pick. Yeah, I agree. In fact, I'll go with you. I thought it was a great pick. So I have zero issue as to whether he was a second-round pick, 55th overall. I mean, let's be realistic about what the NBA draft is. But he has so much hype around him. What's just your general thought on how it played out and where he is with his game?
It's weird. Like, you get it. Like, you understand, a year ago. Let's go back a year ago, right, when LeBron said, hey, I would love playing with my son. And at that point, everyone knew that you had a sense. You didn't know, but you felt like the Sixers were going to draft him, right? I'm not the Sixers. I'm sorry, the Lakers. You felt like the Lakers were going to draft this guy.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, it's like this comes out, and it became – and I was at the pre-draft camp, right, in Chicago. Yeah. And it became one of those things where no one cared about the other lottery picks or any of the lottery picks. It was all about him. I mean, he was the headliner. But then when the game came out, you look at it and you say, wow, he's struggling a little bit. I mean, he's not playing well. And then when we get to the draft and you get to everything and you're saying to yourself, like, they're saying we don't want anybody else to draft him, this and that, da-da-da. And it's like, wow, this is a lot of hype for a guy who's typically a late second-round pick. And now you go and you see how he's playing now, how he played in that one game, and he struggled. In a way, you feel sorry for the guy, but at the same time, you feel like he's being set up for failure. And what I mean by that is it's kind of like, is the more that they talk about him, the more, like, money that he gets, the more that he's, like, being treated like a lottery pick. It's kind of sort of, in my opinion, could backfire on the kid. Because right now, like you said, think about it. Have you ever talked about a 55 pick from another team? I mean, not in Pennsylvania on your show. You know what I mean? So this is it's just one of those things where I feel like he's going to be set up. If everything that he does is going to be, dissected, and every time they do stuff, like for instance, he struggled, and they came out and what was it? Well, we don't care about what he does in summer league. It doesn't matter. So it just seems like people are putting a bullseye on this kid. They don't realize it, but they are. They're putting a bullseye on him.
I agree with all of that, and the part about him, because I watched, because with USC coming into the Big Ten, I tried to take a little bit of time in the past season to take a look at Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC just to get at least a feel for them. That's like Bona, for example. I saw him play a couple times for UCLA. Well, that also meant that Bronny James played. And part about him I just can't tell is how much he was affected by the cardiac arrest and all the time that he missed. And I just don't know how that figures into what we're even seeing right now, because he hasn't really played a lot in the last year.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because you look at it, and initially when he made the McDonald's All-American game, right?
Yeah.
Before all that happened, you're saying, wow, that's crazy. How did he make it? He's the 66th, recruit in the country. So he passed on up. But then in that game, he played well. Like, he actually played well in the McDonald's All-American game. Like, he wasn't a superstar, but he was knocking down threes, and it looked like, he belonged, right? So then he has that, the cardiac arrest, and then he's struggling. But, it's weird, so we don't know. But at the same time, if it was another kid, I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves. With the stats that he put up, they would have said, hey, son, it's your best bet to stay in school another year to prove yourself. But, he didn't have to. So, I don't know how much that impacted, but at the same time, you have to realize that he did get some special privileges because of who he is.
Right. And I think what you said is so spot on, and it's part the Lakers, it's part LeBron, and it's absolutely part ESPN.
Oh, no doubt.
They're setting up. You're right. They're setting him up for failure. He won't be able to do enough for anybody because of what's happened from those three entities that's not allowing him to be him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I do believe that too, because it's one of those things where in the perfect world, you get him. You may give you give him his money, what have you, and you say, okay, he's going to be a couple years. He's going to be a project. He goes down to the G League, this and that. Now, who knows? That may be the plan. But the more media attention that he gets, and the more that you got people up there vouching for him and saying stuff, and then bringing up things like, "Hey, this isn't, this is nepotism," but there's been nepotism in the league for years. There's been this and there's been that, and yada yada. Now, listen, I'm just going to say this: I had some guys who I went to college with, and their fathers were like, CEO. One guy in particular, his dad was a CEO. And we all knew after he graduated that he was going to be, a big wig in the business, right? But at the same time, he did. Now, who knows? I don't know what his grade point average was, but at the same time, he did graduate, right? He graduated and he did stuff, and to this day, he's still a successful businessman. But he's been able to hold his own after that, right? So to me, it's like when the ESPN and other people keep making these excuses, it's kind of like, well, why do we have to bring this up? Like, why are you making excuses? And secondly, you know, there's been other father-son tandems in the NBA, right? But, you know, they didn't make the excuses. I mean, you know, they didn't do it. I mean, think about it. Look at Steph Curry. We're talking about a kid, Steph Curry, whose father, Dell, was a great, you know, sharpshooter.
Sure was.
And this thing. Steph Curry, North Carolina, even though his dad was the man, North Carolina and Duke didn't even give him a scholarship.
That's right.
He goes to Davidson, and he made a name for himself, right? You understand what I'm saying? Like, so things like that happen. I mean, you look at Dominique Wilkins. He had his brother, Gerald Wilkins, had a son who ended up going to playing. I believe he played at NC State.
He did.
And then from there, he had a year, and he had a couple years in the NBA. So, you know, but nothing was built up the way this one was. And I think that the hype and making excuses, and sometimes it comes down to people want to stay in good grace. They don't want, like, LeBron. They don't want LeBron's camp saying, we don't want to deal with y'all. So what they'll do is they'll talk and they'll make excuses and say whatever they can, just so when that something happens, they'll be one of the first people or first persons to get that text message. You know what I mean? So it is what it is, but at the same time, it's unfortunate because what they're doing is a lot of guys now, and y'all know it happens. You're going to go up against a guy who feels like he's been slighted, and they're going to go at this kid, and they're going to try to embarrass the kid. You know what I mean? It's like the kid suddenly becomes a bullseye. And I'm going to tell you this. I was there in Chicago, interviewed him. He's the type of kid that when you talk to him and this and that, you are pulling for this guy. I mean, I was pulling for him, and I still am. I mean, he seems like a great young man. But you're right. All this attention is just putting a bullseye on the kid.
Final question. It's not going to be about him. You go to a summer league. You go to a summer league game with that trained eye of yours, Keith. What do you look for in a summer league game? Fans are looking for something. What are you looking for, if anything?
You know, it's crazy. I remember the first time I was there, I was like covering it like it was an NBA game, and the other reporters were like, dude, what are you doing? Half of these guys aren't going to be here. Like 80% of them. So a lot of times I look at it and see what a guy worked on, right? You know, like, for instance, Ricky Council yesterday was phenomenal, and he played well. You know, coming in, he made 5 of 10 threes. Beforehand, that wasn't a strong suit of his when he got drafted a year ago. That's so that tells me how much work he put in on his game and how, you know, it's not. So it's things like that I look at. I look at, now again, the guy Jared McCann, he's supposed to be a shooter. He came in as a shooter. Now, his shot wasn't falling, but I was looking to see how could he run an offense, the tenacity he brings, you know, other things that he can do on the floor. Now, again, the competition level isn't going to be as good as it is, not even in the preseason, right? But those are the type of things that you want to see. And a lot of times when you got a first-round pick, are they going to dominate? Now, there was a kid who went from Philadelphia who went to Kentucky. Now, he was an undrafted guy, but he was one of the nation's top recruits the year before. And you look at him and you want to see aggressiveness. You don't want to see a guy who's just fitting in. And unfortunately, he didn't show that. He was just trying to fit in. So those are the things that you look at more so than points. It's just that if it's a veteran, a first-year guy or second-year guy, what did he work on in the offseason? The other guy, what can he do when his shot isn't falling? Can he lead an offense? Can he still put an imprint on the game? And then those other guys who have question marks, you want to see them be aggressive. So those are the things that I look for. The games are really, meaningless to me. The score of the game, rather. Right. But it's what they do individually.
Yeah, there was Justin Edwards, probably the Kentucky guy, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry for not naming him.
No. That's fine. Just so everybody knows, if you win the Summer League, you don't get a parade. And the competition in practice, when they get to the preseason, just in practice, is going to be better than this. All right, so.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Before I go, I just want to say, I remember my first Summer League. I'm looking at these guys. I'm seeing all these dudes, who came in from overseas and were ex-NBA players. And I'm like, hey, this is going to be great. And I'm like, well, how come they ain't playing? And the guy said, man, they just got them there for practice. Like, they just practice players. And I was like, oh, so this is what Summer League is like. They're like, yeah, dude, that's all it is.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's televised practices. All right.
Exactly.
Keith, always a pleasure. Great perspective. Appreciate you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on the show. All right, bye-bye.
Outstanding Keith Pompey, Philadelphia Inquirer. And next half hour, Neil Coulong. And then in the final half hour, we'll hear from Giancarlo Stanton's agent. No, he's not.
Maybe his travel agent to get him out of town.
Oh, just so wrong. Yet is it possible you're so right? Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Purdy Insurance.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.